We cannot be held responsible for any injuries or damage that result from attempting this repair. Here we have everything laid out: our iPhone 5C, our toolkit, and our replacement screen. The toolkit and replacement screen can be found on our website. Now here's a closer look at our replacement screen. On the front side, we have the glass. On the rear is the LCD or display. And in between the glass and the LCD is the digitizer, which detects your touch. You want to be sure to purchase the full screen assembly, as you cannot separate these pieces on the original screen. The glass, LCD, and digitizer are all fused together. On our website you will only find the full screen assemblies. We'll begin by powering off the device. Our next step is to remove two pentalobe screws located on opposite sides of the sync port using our pentalobe screwdriver. Throughout this process we'll be removing a number of screws, many of which are different sizes. You should place them strategically out to the side and associate them with the parts they come out with. This will make for an easier reassembly. We'll now apply packaging tape to the surface of the screen. With a cracked screen, this will allow you to get a solid seal with the suction cup. We'll apply the suction cup as close to the home button as possible, as we'll be lifting the screen out at an angle from the top. There are still 3 cables which are plugged in up top that are attached to the logic board and the screen. So do not lift the screen past just under a 90-degree angle to prevent damage. As you're lifting out the screen, you should cup your hands around the bottom portion near the home button so that they catch the screen when it comes free. Otherwise the screen will come out violently and you risk damaging some components. And here you can see what the screen will look like as it's coming free from the casing. On the inside we still have those 3 cables which are attached up top, so continue to hold the screen at an angle as you open it away from the phone. There's a metal plate which is covering those 3 cables plugged in up top. It's held on with 4 Phillips screws, which we'll remove next. We've now exposed those 3 cables being pointed out here that will need to be removed. The third is located beneath the top cable and will be exposed as we remove them in the order shown. Using your non-conductive plastic pry tool, wedge beneath these cables and gently unplug them by lifting upwards. At this point, the screen assembly is now completely free from the rest of the phone. Before proceeding to a somewhat time-consuming process of swapping parts from our old screen assembly onto our new, we'll take our new replacement, plug it in, and verify that the touchscreen and LCD display are functioning properly. Because we're dealing with electronic components, although rare, we do come across defects on occasion. So we want to avoid any wasted efforts by first testing the screen. Do note that the screen is not complete at this point. However, we can still plug it in, power up the phone, and verify its functionality. Because the components up top haven't been swapped yet, we only have 2 cables to plug in. One powers the LCD and one leads to the digitizer. We'll place these cables over the ports and carefully press down, and the cable should snap into place. If you find yourself having to press extremely hard, reposition the cable over the port. If you damage the connectors on the logic board, the phone may not be repairable. With the cables plugged in, we'll fold our screen down. However, it's not necessary to close the screen completely. In fact, you don't want to do that because it's going to require more effort to remove it. With the screen laid over the phone, we'll power it up And once the phone boots, we'll verify that the LCD has no dead lines or pixels, and the touchscreen detects touch in all areas. With the screen verification complete, we'll power off our phone and unplug the screen. Now, on a brief side note, as you have the device open, it may not be a bad idea to replace the battery, as each battery only has a finite number of charges. It's a simple process. We remove 2 Phillips screws, holding on a metal cover, and then we can unplug the battery using our plastic non-conductive pry tool, just as we did with the screen cables. Now, the battery is held on with some strong adhesive, so it will take some effort to pry it out from the casing. If you heat it up using a heat gun or hair dryer, that will help the process. We'll now be swapping components from our original screen onto our replacement. This includes the home button assembly, the top earpiece and front-facing camera, as well as proximity sensor, and the metal insert that sits in the center. To remove the home button assembly, start by removing 2 Phillips screws that are holding on the metal support. Now, the home button cable isn't yet free. The side of it is held on with a light adhesive, so we'll use our small plastic pry tool to wedge underneath of it and free this cable from the adhesive. Do not try to pull out the home button assembly before freeing this piece from the adhesive, or you risk tearing the home button cable, and then you're left replacing another part. The plastic home button that you see on the exterior of the screen is held to a rubber backing, which is stuck to the screen with a light adhesive. So we'll apply pressure from the front and carefully free this rubber piece from the adhesive. Do not tear the rubber, or you will again have to replace another part. We'll now be removing the top components, and we'll start by removing a metal cover, which is held on with 2 Phillips screws. To remove the metal cover, we'll have to undo the clip which sits underneath the plastic piece in the screen. We'll use our small flathead screwdriver and pry outwards on this metal clip, freeing it from the screen. Here you can see this piece close up and better understand how to undo that clip. Here we're removing the ear speaker. On the back side of the ear speaker there are 2 contacts which touch 2 copper contacts on the cable and power this ear speaker. As with the home button cable, we'll use our plastic pry tool to wedge underneath of this cable up top and carefully free it from its adhesive. And up comes the cable and all associated components, including the front-facing camera, light sensor, and proximity sensor. Now gently lift out the microphone which sits inside of its rubber slot. Nothing more needs to be done with these cables. They're attached to the back metal insert, which we'll be swapping onto our replacement screen. To remove this insert, there are 6 Phillips screws holding it in place that are being removed now. Now push outwards on the metal frame, which will leave a gap in between the screw holes on the metal insert and the frame, allowing you to use your small flathead to lift out the metal insert. Our final removal from the old screen are 2 plastic position mounts, one for the front-facing camera and one for the light sensor. These pieces are glued onto the original screen, so we'll have to break them off as cleanly as possible. the small flathead screwdriver seems to work best. Now, unlike original superglue gel does not run or spread out as it dries, which could cloud our lenses. We'll place very small dabs of superglue gel in the areas shown, which will adhere our plastic brackets to the new screen. Be extremely careful when applying the adhesive around the camera lens. If you get any type of glue over the lens, your front-facing camera will not function very well. There are some alternative adhesives that you could use which would be more forgiving had you got some glue on the camera lens. However, we find that superglue gel dries the fastest and holds the strongest bond. If you're careful, you shouldn't have any problems. To ensure extra strong bonds, we can apply small amounts of glue at the top around the sides of these plastic pieces. Allow the glue to dry for approximately 20 minutes before continuing. Continuing on, we'll remove the plastic protector on the back side of the LCD screen. Properly position the metal insert in your replacement screen and reinstall the 6 Phillips screws that hold this support in place. We'll now continue with the installation of the top components, and we'll start by placing the microphone inside of its rubber slot. It's very important that these components are placed in their respective slots, or they may not function properly. Usually, if something's misplaced, the metal cover will not fit on snug and flush. All components seem to be properly positioned. We can verify that the camera and light sensor are in their proper positions by turning over the screen and looking through the glass windows. With all components properly positioned and verified, and the cable sitting flush, we can replace our ear speaker in its correct orientation. The metal cover can be a bit tricky to install. However, if you understand how it works, it should be straightforward. The metal extension shown here needs to first be slid underneath of an opening beneath a plastic tab in the screen. You can then fold this piece down like a hinge, and the metal clip on the opposite side, which was shown during removal of this piece, will clip into its opening in the screen, locking this piece in place. Watch closely as we demonstrate in the video. And now we can reinstall the 2 Phillips screws which secure the metal cover. Now we'll turn our attention towards the home button, where we'll start by inserting the home button into the opening and applying pressure around the perimeter of the rubber surround, which will secure this to the new screen. Now grab the home button cable, which is attached to its metal backing, and properly place it so that the screw holes line up. Using your plastic pry tool, apply pressure on the cable to secure it to the screen. The existing adhesive on this cable should suffice. Also, there are plastic extensions coming out from the screen which go through openings in the cable. This way you know it's properly positioned. Now go ahead and reinsert those 2 Phillips screws holding this piece in place. Verify that the home button is clicking normally. We're now ready to plug in our new screen. Begin by forming the cables as they will be when the screen is closed. Now we'll go ahead and plug these cables in the order shown. You shouldn't have to press extremely hard. If you find yourself applying a lot of pressure, reposition the cable over its plug and it should snap into place more freely. If the plug is not properly positioned over the connector and you apply too much force, you could damage the connector and make the device not repairable. As long as you have patience and take your time with this, you shouldn't have any problems. With all the screen cables plugged in, work your finger over them once more just to make sure that they're all securely plugged in place. Now properly place the metal cover and reinstall the 4 Phillips screws that secure this piece in place. From this point on, keep the screen below a 90-degree angle with the phone to minimize risk of any damage to the screen cables. A second person may come in handy for this part. We're now ready to close the screen. At the top, we have extensions from the screen which sit in indents in the casing. We'll first set the top portion flush and then close the screen like a hinge, gradually setting it flush from top to bottom. And it's a good idea to have the screen on while you're doing this so that you can see if there's anything applying pressure to the back side of the LCD. Another note is that you should not have to press extremely hard when closing the screen. If you find yourself applying extreme force, take a step back because you risk cracking the new screen. Now watch here as we continue demonstrating the process of safely setting the screen flush. Your best bet while closing the screen is to have the phone flat on a table. We have the phone raised, in this case, only for demonstration purposes so that you can see the screen as it's being set flush. With the screen flush on all sides, verify that everything is working properly. And our final step in this repair is to reinstall the 2 pentalobe screws on opposite sides of the sync port. For a complete list of parts and tools for this model as well as many others, please visit our website. Thanks for watching.